Good evening. So you want to hear a tale about the weird and abnormal? Well, I might have one for you. It takes place in the streets of Calderon City, a big and busy place where the streets are filled with traders and charlatans all day long. But at sundown, the activity moves indoors at taverns and other fine establishments, leaving the streets bare and empty. So late one evening, as I was taking a relaxing stroll down the empty streets, out of nowhere I heard the most peculiar sound, a symphony of clucks and squawks, followed by an angry man's voice, yelling something I couldn't quite hear. And then 3 chickens burst out from the nearby alleyway, feathers flying everywhere. They spot me walking towards them and quickly sets off in the opposite direction. Shortly after, an angry guardsman rolls out from the alley on a bunch of old barrels, sending him smack down on his face in the middle of the street. Cursing like an old sailor, he picked himself up and saw me standing there looking at him. He then asked me if I had seen the chickens, and yelled that they had to be stopped no matter the cost. Then a loud squawk sounded from further down the street, and he quickly looked towards it and set off in a sprint before I could even utter a single word. I was in shock. What was all this? Never in my life had I experienced such a scene as the one that had just unfolded before my eyes. I simply had to know more, so I tacked along to see where this might lead. As I followed the guardsman down the street, he seemed to get angrier and angrier for every time he yelled at the chickens. At one point, he even attracted the attention of a nearby group of patrolling guards, who came rushing to ask what was going on. But the moment they noticed that he was chasing chickens, they gave him a stern warning that he should return to his post and keep an eye out for the actual robbers. Apparently there had been a robbery at one of the manors in town, and one of the high nobles had been knocked out by the robbers who had gotten away with some of his most prized possessions. And so every guard in town was meant to be on the lookout and find these robbers. But the angry guardsman simply replied that he was in pursuit of the exact robbers that they were on the lookout for. They had used some sort of unholy magic to turn themselves and their stolen goods into chickens, and they were about to get away. With that, he ran away from the other guards and continued his pursuit of the chickens, whilst the others, simply thinking him mad, shook their heads and continued on with their patrol. Once again, he continued yelling for them to stop and receive their due punishment, but the chickens merely seemed to be clucking at him mockingly. There were definitely more to these chickens than met the eye. An entire hour passed with us running all around town, and in the end we found ourselves at the entrance to the city sewers. A disgusting place, but this had been the place that the 3 chickens vanished into. Wary that danger could be lurking right around the corner in this dreadful place, the guardsman equipped his shield that he had carried on his back, and with his sword in his other hand, he was ready to venture into the stinking depths of the city sewers. Once inside, my nostrils were instantly burned by the rancid smells pouring out of every part of this slimy place. Torches on the walls lit our path, and the tracks of chickens in the mud led us down a series of corridors until we reached an old wooden door. Cautiously, we opened the door and found ourselves at the top of an open staircase leading down into a rather big room, and there at the center of the room stood the chickens, accompanied by a large hooded figure. One by one, the chickens each lay an egg, and the hooded figure collected and cracked them open on a nearby table. And as the figure did so, a bunch of small, tiny, shiny objects would pour out of the shell and land on the table. And as they did so, they grew in size, back to what they were supposed to be. When he was done, a heap full of gold and jewels lay on the table. He then applauded the chickens for a job well done, and their shapes started to shimmer and blur as each chicken grew in size and took on a more humanoid silhouette. But they did not transform entirely into humans. Their bodies transformed into a weird combination of a chicken and a human. Their legs and heads were that of a chicken, the rest was human. It was both horrendous and fascinating to look at. But clearly the guardsman was disturbed by this turn of events as he gagged at the mere sight, drawing the attention of the creatures below. Unsure how to tackle this situation, he stood up from our hiding and told them all to surrender themselves and stand trial for their crimes. The hooded figure took a step forward and revealed their true appearance by dropping their cloak entirely, revealing to be a huge rooster-like man. Same combination of features as the others, except that he was a lot bigger. He pointed at us and said in a voice that sounded human that it seemed that a couple of worms had found their way into their nest, and with a terrible screaming sound, he set off the hunt for us, and the three chicken-like people started running towards us. Unwilling to fight these creatures, the guard dropped his weapon and shield on the spot and turned tail and ran towards the exit. I, of course, followed suit, as to not end my days as a mere worm caught between the beaks of these monsters. Somehow we found our way back to the entrance of the sewers without getting caught by our pursuers, and made contact with other guards in the area. We proudly told that we had found the nest of the robbers and their mastermind that had hatched the entire plan. We of course withheld any mention of chickens and monsters, as else I was sure they wouldn't have believed anything we said. But upon return to the sewers and the hidden room they had been in, they were all gone. The only thing revealing that we told the truth was a dropped jewel that had hidden itself under the table, else there were nothing but a couple of feathers lying in the dust, and so the robbers were never caught, and we never found any traces of where these chicken folk had gone. So do be careful if you see a bunch of chickens running around places they don't belong. They might just be more than you think.